This is episode 10, part 1 of the interview with Jorge Bueno. iTunes review of the week is from Tigran Arakelian. He says, I started listening to this podcast from the very beginning and was honored when Leon Gabrielian invited me to be a guest. He is consummate professional in every aspect of bringing this program to life. Exciting and very accomplished guests, great questions, and well-presented podcast for the followers. Thank you, Leon, for all your hard work. You're welcome, Tigran. And thank you for taking the time to submit a review on iTunes. Hi, my name is Leon Gabrielian, and this is the Thriving Life Club, the podcast for those who want to thrive in every area of life. Thanks for joining me today. Welcome to the club. Let's begin. Welcome back to the club, champion. Our today's guest is Jorge Bueno. You might remember him from episode 5, where we talked about how to fund your $1 million business idea. Today, let's spend some time to get to know him better and learn some of the things that he does on a daily basis and throughout his life, makes him successful and inspire other people. Welcome to the club, Jorge.
Thanks, Leon, for inviting me back. Last time we had a lot of fun. It was great to be able to share some of the questions that some of your listeners had submitted, and also some that you had, and just some of the rants that we just decided to go on. It was nice to be able to share that, and look forward to expanding people's worlds and their knowledge base as they continue their journey as an entrepreneur or a business person. So I'm looking forward to this recording.
Absolutely. Jorge, I asked this question most of my guests, and it might sound as a big question, but let's just go with it. Who is Jorge Bueno? Let's start with who is Jorge Bueno in your own words.
Jorge Bueno is a poor Mexican kid who used to get bused to school that decided that he wanted to change his family's financial course throughout history by making sure that he didn't listen to negative beliefs that most people threw his way. And he wanted to make sure that he was able to provide for his family, to his mom and his wife and his child, and make people around him better people as a result of having been friends with Jorge. In a quick nutshell, and of course I can go on for 45 minutes, but I want to make sure we stay on target. That, in a nutshell, that's who Jorge is. I've grown now from that poor Mexican kid to an entrepreneurial-minded individual that started acquiring apartment buildings years back. In fact, in 1996 was my first apartment property. And so now when I introduce myself and people ask me in corporate environments, hey, what do you do? Like, hey, we acquire commercial residential apartment buildings, and we fix them up, rent them out, and provide a nice home for great families. And that's it. And then I tell them, but my real passion is teaching people business startup and business funding and the process of incorporating and the process of raising capital for your business. And that's what brings a lot of joy to me, is to watch people that have a dream and they want to fulfill it, to be able to capture the funding necessary in order to open up that business or expand it and grow it. And so that's who Jorge is, the helper, the friend, the confidant, the person who wants to lend a helping hand without really seeking a ton in return, because you can call it selfish, but in a reverse way. The selfish is that I bring myself happiness by watching people be happy. And if it happened as a result of my actions, then that is the maximum euphoria, where I know that I did it and I don't really need the world to know that I was the secret weapon behind it. But the satisfaction of me sitting at dinner with my lady that I have just influenced a life is really what brings a ton of happiness to me.
You mentioned some negative beliefs that you had to overcome, either your negative beliefs or negative beliefs of others.
Oh, yeah.
What are some of the negative beliefs that you had to overcome in the past?
Oh, listen, those negative beliefs are there all the time, mainly in the past, but they creep up from time to time. And so your listeners know it. It's called auditory digital self-talk. And unfortunately, we all have it. And, I get it from time to time. And it's the limiting beliefs that kind of say to you different things. For me, early on, it used to be fear of failure. What's going to happen if I start this, and what are people going to think if it doesn't really work out? And so fear of failure is one thing, but then later on you get successful and you get fear of success. So like for me later on in life, it wasn't fear of not taking action. It was fear of getting too big and making too much money and having a different set of problems as a result of it. So your mind is such a powerful thing that it plays tricks on you constantly. And your listeners, if they've ever been in a situation where they wanted to do something great or maybe something new, even if it wasn't something totally great, right? Just something new in their life. And they automatically, instinctively in the back of their head said, you don't deserve that. Why would you do that? I mean, who are you? Why would you want to do that? And people like you aren't supposed to, do that type of thing. That doesn't even go with you. And so it's very important to make sure that if you ever have that kind of talk that I had throughout my life and continue to have from time to time, that we need to do what's called a reframe. So we need to make sure that we address it with love, right? Hey, do I deserve it? Of course I deserve it, and then kind of like float higher and taller above the situation. So really get a full picture image and be able to break through that way. Because a lot of times when we're in the mix and we're the ones doing stuff, it's really difficult to see the remedy. And it's also really difficult to see the exit or the correct path. And so, man, the self-talk is very destructive. And some of the other negative beliefs were, hey, you're just a Mexican guy. Only because of my upbringing through the American school system and elementary school, from there all the way to high school and so forth here in the States, it was always like, hey, you're not an American dude, right? It's funny because you're just a human. Everyone has the same amount of power, right? I mean, you're connected to source, you're a spiritual being. We're all having a spiritual journey, right? In a physical existence. But it's so funny how society dictates how you're supposed to feel about yourself based on where you were born. It's so silly. And so those very simple thoughts can turn into something that can ruin a life. And when I say ruin a life, I don't mean throw away a life. I mean that can stall someone, that can keep someone from doing something beautiful in their life. And for me, that happened. And luckily it happened and I was able to overcome it by just basically looking in the mirror and just doing things and saying, you know what? What's going on here, man? Look, I'm going to do this anyway. And being able to, of course, later, I had to get some training. The training was like for your listeners is listening to your podcast. The training is expanding their knowledge of self, expanding their knowledge base on and through people's experiences, reading biographies, being exposed to winning attitude individuals, people that are, making decent money, that are doing great things in life. So for your listeners, it's listening to your podcast and getting expanded that way. For me, it was tapping into people who were doing great things in life around me, that were already successful in their own right. And that's what I did, man. I mean, from early on waiting tables, bartending, running a massage business. I mean, having little odd jobs here and there and trying to figure out my path, trying to figure out which way is my calling, what it is that's going to bring me joy and passion. Back then, I didn't see it as joy and passion. Back then, I saw it as like, hey, I have a car payment. I need to be able to make that car payment and pay my bills and pay my credit cards. That's what I saw it as. I saw it an immediate fix. So I just took the immediate jobs that I thought were flexible enough that would allow me time to pursue my real passion back in the day, which was music. And then later on from music, it became real estate. And then from real estate, I was able to get additional funding in my life, that I was able to get additional training in terms of seeking out mentors that taught me hypnotherapy and NLP and hypnosis, and studied with some of the greats out there. And no, I'm not talking about Tony Robbins, although he does pretty cool stuff. And being able to train with individuals who would help me in the future bypass that critical faculty in my mind that told me that something was supposed to be difficult, that told me that something was supposed to be impossible. You trick yourself. You trick yourself into believing that what your mind is telling you is a bunch of BS. Because at the end of the day, it is a bunch of BS. It's just auditory, digital, negative self-talk that you're creating, and then you believe is true. No one else believes it. No one else wants to hear your excuses. No one else wants to know what your limiting belief and why you haven't done that thing that you're supposed to do, that thing that you are procrastinating towards doing. Those excuses don't work for anyone else. And Bank of America and Wells Fargo, they also won't accept your excuses at the end of the month when you need to make deposits, right? And so we create this in our mind. So it's very easy to undo it. And so got good at it a little bit later on and was able to continue expanding and growing in business and becoming a better individual. It also did help that had a child early on, that my baby mama, who didn't end up being my wife, but my lady back in the day, we became pregnant, right? And so the driving force for me was, oh my goodness, I have a child, and now I have to man up very fast. There wasn't an opportunity for me to say, hey man, I'm going to take my college years and go to the bars. And I didn't really drink alcohol seriously till, a few years back, man. Like, alcohol was non-existent. Party scene was non-existent. It was focus. It was like, hey, when all my friends were going to the club, when all my friends were going out for drinks after the shift, usually after my shift at the restaurant, I'd have to go pick up my son because I had joint physical and legal custody of him when his baby mama and I didn't end up together. And so, I sued for custody because I wanted to be a part of his life. And so having a child, man, is a powerful motivator. And for your listeners, if they have a child, then they know what I'm talking about. If they do not have a child, it's very easy to create the same level of urgency. And all they have to do is pretend that their current wife, or that if they're a female, that they're pregnant. And pretty soon, in 8 months, they're going to have a child, and that child is very expensive, and diapers are expensive, and they're going to have to provide. Okay, that's an extreme example. You don't have to pretend you're pregnant necessarily, but you have to put something in your future that is a deadline, because most people don't believe that they're going to die. Most people don't believe that their life is finite. Most people think they're going to live forever and that, they can just do things next week, next month, next year. And so one of the big tricks is to insert an event, a trigger in your current life that lets you know, hey, I need to make this amount of money because by June of 2018, this event is going to happen, and I need to be prepared. I need to make sure everything is good to go. I need a cushion of $150,000. I need a cushion of $15,000. Whatever it is for you, whatever it is for your listener, then inserting that trigger and that event in your future, huge motivator, man. Especially if you write it down and you believe it as true and you believe it to be like a real deadline. The thing is, people have regular jobs. Those deadlines are put on you by force, right? So we're given deadlines. Hey, I need that report by Friday. Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir. And you get to work, right? And then when you become an entrepreneur, like I know many of your listeners are, self-made entrepreneurs, or maybe they're starting a business and they have a regular job, but they want to make the transition. One of the things they're going to have to focus on is putting those artificial events and deadlines in their future, because no one else is going to give them to you. And that's kind of like the drawback towards being an entrepreneur, is that no one is giving you a schedule. And it's very easy to become complacent. And I've done that for years, man. I mean, the biggest event of someone's day is figuring out where you're going to have lunch. It gets very boring. And if you don't have deadlines that you have to artificially superimpose into your calendar, then it becomes a life of like, hey, I have a bunch of money, I have a bunch of apartment buildings, I have a bunch of units. I want to create my business startup course online, but I don't need to. It's just a pain in the butt having to do all that. So being successful can actually be detrimental at the same time. So for me, it's happened many times. Like, I'm the world's best procrastinator. I mean, better than any one of your listeners. If you're a listener and you think you can procrastinate better than me, I will challenge you to a sleep session, man. I have an ongoing battle with my cat to see who's lazier. And a lot of times I win. So here's why I'm being transparent with your audience, right? Because people can go to my Instagram page. People can go to my Facebook page. People can follow me online. They can, hey, Jorge Bueno, who's this dude? What's going on? And they can see all these pictures of fancy stuff, right? Yeah, fancy this, fancy that. All right, no problem. But I need to make sure that these people that are listening to you get, real advice, man. The problem with today's social media society is that anyone can become a so-called expert overnight by just putting a bunch of pretty pictures online. And people will take it as face value. Hey, man, oh, dude, this guy must be successful. And, the reality is I take a look at people's profiles and I can tell, hey, these guys have no real money, dude. I mean, I can tell. All right. It's just, it doesn't make any sense. And then you look at it and you're like, well, I guess if it helps motivate someone, it's not that bad. But the thing is, with your listeners, I believe that you're really looking to instill core leadership and good motivation, like real lasting motivation, not the kind of motivation that you get from a seminar that you go to and you feel really good. And then it goes away by Wednesday, the week after the seminar, and you're back, you're miserable again, back in your cubicle. This is real lasting change that you're looking to instill in people by listening to the Thriving Life podcast, which is, I think is very honorable, man. And, you and I have a good history together, many years of friendship. And so I feel very comfortable being very transparent with your audience. Now, do I still have that ongoing battle with my cat about who can be lazier? Yeah, that happens about once a week. All right. So it is true. It just doesn't happen every day. I mean, for example, today, been up since 6 a.m, working, doing stuff, working out, spinning, doing my thing, staying in shape, having my spiritual time early in the morning, when it's best to be connected to your source and, your high self. People call it meditation or prayer. You call it whatever you want, but it is still time where you're just kind of focusing on your day so that you can attack your day in a way that makes the best financial sense. And also that in a way that's going to give you the best leisure in the future. So for those of you who are already rich, then you might want to meditate upon how you can bring more value to your employees or to your husband or to your wife, and how you can bring more value to other people that you serve via your business, your customers and your client base and so forth. And for those of you who are struggling, who are just beginning a business, then instead of focusing on pretending you're rich, you need to focus on what you need to do to cover, your next 6 months of expenses in case you lose your job, right? Or in case your business doesn't make huge sales. You need to make sure and create a nice, good financial cushion so that you don't ever have to stress and worry. And so depending on where people are in their life, that's what their still meditation, motivation time is going to be focused on, right? And for me, it's usually about how to increase my relationship with my lady, with my wife, Marianne, and how to have, more romantic times and date nights. And how do you top the things that we've done for the past 13 years? I mean, how do you top me taking her because she wants to see a musical and the musical's not playing anywhere else but in New York, and just taking her to New York to watch the musical because she felt like watching a musical that weekend and it wasn't playing anywhere else, right? And then she wants to have dinner at a certain restaurant and that restaurant's closed, but there's another same restaurant in another state and you could just get up and go and travel in the best luxury possible. All right. So my focus is on my family and creating value for others. And so I would challenge your listeners to think about where they are in life and stop fooling yourself. The problem with a lot of this social media madness that's going on, including a lot of the data that people are receiving via, motivational seminars and audiobooks and, people out there pitching their next best thing. The problem with that is they fill you with positive thinking, fake it till you make it type mentality. And the problem is that it's the issue. Now, here, let me eliminate the word problem and substitute it with challenge. Okay. The challenge with people motivating themselves and psyching themselves out to believe that they're already wealthy is that your mind is so powerful that if it believes it's wealthy, it will not do things to actually make you wealthy. It'll just do things that will contribute to your I'm already wealthy lifestyle. And so you'll go for an extended lunch break. You'll have a cappuccino with a cigar and you'll forget that you really aren't wealthy yet. And you have to become wealthy to enjoy it. So there has to be a delicate balance, meaning you have to have a foot in your daydreams and a foot in real life. I noticed that a lot of entrepreneurs have both feet in daydream la la land, in daydream Hollywood movies, in Netflix binge watching, in escaping their reality with alcohol, with parties, with TV, with internet, YouTube videos, with watching people on Instagram and following and living vicariously through a celebrity's eyes, living vicariously through them. And all of a sudden your mind believes that their world is your world because you're living it and you're watching it unfold. And it's not your life. You haven't made the money, and that celebrity's not going to give you money, and your neighbor's not going to give you money. So you get into a situation where it's a downward spiral. And a lot of times you don't see it as downward. You see it as a holding pattern because you don't realize you're going down. But if you're not growing, then you're dying. And if you're not living and succeeding and thriving like your podcast, then you're remaining stagnant, or maybe you're regressing. So I want your listeners to, when they hear me now, to do a quick evaluation. Have you been fooling yourself a little bit based on all of this social media madness? Maybe I have. I mean, I look at social media sometimes, and for me, I don't look at cars. I don't look at, private jets. Been there, done that, right? I don't sit there and look at, the watches. I'll like a post here and there, of course, but it's not my main trigger. What I'm looking at mainly is I'm looking vistas of like Portofino, Italy, where I want to take my lady next. Monte Carlo, right? Monaco. I'm looking at pictures of places where I want to take my wife on vacation and / business trip. I'm looking at pictures of a cigar with the Monte Carlo casino in the background. I'm looking at people with nice physiques, right? With a good body that they're in tune with their actual temple, their body temple, and they're in tune spiritually with that based on their eating and so forth. So my drivers are a little bit different than some of your listeners, and I understand that. But I do encourage, since you do know your audience very well, let me know in which direction we should run on this thread so that we can continue to provide them some great value.
Let's define what success is to you. What's your definition of success? And then we'll go from there.
Thank you. Success is being able to, and by the way, let me just make a disclaimer. I don't equate how much money someone has or how much money someone makes, because those are just Federal Reserve notes that you use to pay your gas bill and put gas in your car and your car payment. So I don't necessarily equate fiat currency possession to success. Okay. Just wanted to make sure people understand that. In other words, having a bunch of money doesn't mean you're successful. Okay. That just means you have a lot of Federal Reserve notes. That's all it means. I like the idea of equating success with freedom. Freedom being, I can sleep in if I choose to. I can go into the office whenever I feel like it. I can take my lady out of a class or wherever she is, and I can take her on a nice trip on a whim whenever we feel like it, whenever I feel like it, or we talk about it. I can go to any part of the world to have the food that they serve there just because. And so when I say freedom, I don't mean like, hey, never having to work again, because at the end of the day, anyone who tells you that they're retired and they're 30 years of age, okay, I get it. You're retired, you're 30 years of age. Well, then you must not have any goals to serve people and to help any other souls on this planet, because you're clearly a selfish individual if you just don't want to provide value anymore for people because you believe you have enough money to sit there and go to, Shakey's Pizza and Il Fornaio for dinner and, to drink your Riesling. How goofy is that? And so success is freedom, and success is attracting the love, the freedom to be yourself. Because if you don't have freedom, it's tough to be yourself. If you're at a job you hate, it's kind of tough to let your true self shine. If you don't have the body you desire, it's going to be difficult for people to see your true, beautiful self. And so freedom brings you the opportunity to get the best workouts, to focus on the business that gives you the money that you need to hire the best chefs, to put you in shape, to work you out, to get rid of that belly if you have a belly, or your fupa, the lower belly. You need to make sure that you have enough freedom in your life and love in your life so that your truth self shines.
And what would you say had the biggest impact in turning you into the person you are today? Looking back at yourself 20 years ago, for example, what kind of advice would you give to the Jorge 20 years ago to make it faster, make the journey easier?
Yeah, of course. So I would tell that individual, hey, it's not your fault. Okay, stop blaming people. Stop telling people that it's their fault as to why you're where you are. It's never anyone else's fault. I think a lot of people go around pointing fingers as to why they're not where they are in life. So the first thing I would say is, hey, it's not your fault, man. And now that you realize that, let's get to work, because there's no reason why you should stare into the past, because as you're staring into the past, it's really difficult to move forward and not make a mistake. If you are constantly reevaluating or dwelling on the past, dwelling on mistakes, dwelling on what you coulda, shoulda, woulda, then it's tough to move forward with your head facing the other direction, right? So I would say immediately that. The other factor you asked me about, my contributing factor, and what were those triggers that made me change and made me accelerate towards success. The first one was the act of being raised by a single mother. Okay, that made me like the little man of the household, being the only dude, the only guy with my. I just have sisters, So the only man of the house, since my parents split when I was 5 years of age. So even though my dad's still in my life and, I love him and, we hang out and we have a great relationship together and stuff. He doesn't live in the Los Angeles area, but, I do visit him and we have a great relationship. Great relationship with my mom, taking her to dinner tonight, nice steak dinner with wine and cigars. My mom smokes cigars. How do you like that? I'm a bad influence, but she used to smoke cigarettes when I was young. So for her, it's not a big jump. So having been raised by a single mom, huge motivator, right? Made me the little king of the house. But being filled with self-doubt and self-esteem issues was also tough. So having a child early on in my life was the second biggest motivator, because I went from being a kid to being head of household necessarily, right? Head of the household for a bunch of ladies, my mom and my sisters, and to being a father and to being on my own for a short period of time before being a father. What happened then was I already had experience watching my mom struggle. So I already knew what it was like to struggle, and I didn't want my son to experience any of that. I hated it. So I wanted to make sure that he was like set up, man. My goal from the very beginning was, all right, you know how we didn't have enough money to go to the fancy restaurants? Okay, that's never going to happen ever in my situation. If I can help it, we will not be in a situation where we have to split a bunch of Jack in the Box 99 cents tacos, okay? It's not going to happen. No way. Having a child really, it accelerated my learning in such a quick pace, such a rapid pace that I think people, you go have kids. I'm just kidding. Don't have kids. Go get someone pregnant. No, hey, even if you don't know them, you know what I mean? Just get them pregnant. No, don't do that. But do something else that, here's what you can do. You can pretend that you're going to be laid off in, what is today? I don't know. We're in February something, right? February 10th. All right. If someone needs a motivator and you need an exercise for these listeners that are listening to the podcast today, then I'm going to ask you to do yourself a favor. If you find yourself struggling a little bit and maybe you don't have the desire, or you're a great procrastinator like I am sometimes, and you want to accelerate your learning and you want to get more successful, whatever that means to you, and you want to have more freedom, money, time in your life, right? To do cool things. Then I want you to pretend that your company's laying you off at the end of April, or, at the end of June. Give yourself like 3 months, 4 months, or give yourself a month if you really want to accelerate it. You say, hey man, it's the beginning of February. I'm being laid off at the end of February, right? I have 3 weeks and I'm not going to have a paycheck. I got one extra paycheck after that in my severance package. And then I'm screwed. How am I going to make my rent or my mortgage, my car, my credit cards? How am I going to keep my gym membership? How am I going to pay American Express? How am I going to do things, man? How am I going to do this? So you have to say, hey, man, you're being fired from your job. And that way, if you're this person that's been trying to moonlight into having a side business, a little side hustle, maybe you want to set up a website, maybe you want to set up a Shopify store, maybe you want to set up some kind of, online business or brick and mortar business, but you've been lagging. Well, guess what? Your results will be accelerated in such a huge way, because you'll wake up and you'll slap yourself. And every day you have to look at that and say, hey, man, 17 more days till I'm out of work. Okay. 17 more days till I tap into my savings. And guess what? I can tell you, Leon, that most people in the US do not have great savings accounts. Do not. Most people in the US don't even have an extra $1,000 if they had a medical emergency or an automobile emergency. Most people can't produce $1,000, man. A lot of people can't produce $500. If they wanted to start up a business, even a network marketing business, they couldn't do it because they couldn't afford the $500, right? And so it's a sad place in the economy for people who don't take advantage of the wonderful opportunities that the internet has for starting a business, the awesome opportunities that you have for motivation from people all around you succeeding. And so I would encourage people to, try that exercise, and wow, you're going to see how he's going to kick you in the butt, man. What do you think about that exercise? Do you have a similar one that you've heard people talk about in terms of supercharging your results?
I haven't heard this specific example, no, but it's a great exercise. It should make someone feel that urge to actually do something instead of focusing 100% on entertainment and having fun, going out and doing all those things. Spend 80% of the time at least on daily grind, the stuff that makes money, stuff that is going to make money in a month.
You know, Leon, the other thing I wanted to mention to people is I didn't want to be too grim. I didn't want to be a downer. You know, I'm already kind of revealing and exposing myself. And for some people, it's like, dude, you already have me depressed. But here's the thing. The exercise that I'm talking about with pretend that you're going to be laid off, the real exercise that I do with my private clients is you pretend you're dying. That's the real exercise. I didn't want to say it to your podcast listeners, but the exercise really is pretend you're going to die on that day. And all of a sudden, everything seems so stupid. All of the reasons that you didn't do things, all of the self-talk and pity and self-esteem issues that you have, they all seem kind of stupid if you know you're going to be leaving the earth on, you know, a future date. And so that exercise actually is more powerful if you say that this is the day that, you know, whatever. Now, here's the thing. Here's where that comes from. It comes from in one of my seminars, we do closed eye meditations and so forth. And for my private clients, I've always done, whenever they go to my seminars in private, we do a thing called write your own eulogy, right? What will people say about you? What do you hope people say about you? And dude, it's powerful, man. Leon, can you imagine how powerful that would be to have someone write their own eulogy that their best friend is going to read at their wake or, you know, at their celebration of life ceremony?
Man, it's life-changing.
I've always looked at unconventional ways to drive motivation. And when I went out to seek mentors, one of my mentors had me do that exercise. And I remember thinking, oh, no, I don't want to think about that, man. No way. I don't even want to think about that. Why would I want to think about that? No, you're crazy. It's a law of attraction. If I dwell on that, no, stop it. But he was like, listen, it's not about the law of attraction and you attracting, you know, illness to your life. It's not about that. It's about how are you going to supercharge and motivate yourself to do something unless there's a finite expiration date, right? How are you going to do that? So that the original exercise is about death. But if you don't want to be too grim with yourself, then just pretend you're going to be laid off, you know, or pretend your sugar daddy is going to break up with you on such dates, right? And you're no longer going to have a bunch of free money. Anyway, so hopefully that helps someone.
I think it absolutely will. Personally, me, I don't think it's grim at all. It's probably the training I had or been exposed to you and other great people like you. Feel free to share examples like that. I think mainstream media, there are some topics, some exercises, some things that mainstream media cannot talk about. So when majority of people listen to mainstream media, you know, it's the easiest thing to do. You just turn on the TV and there it is. So they become aware about certain things and they're not aware about other things that could be more beneficial and help them succeed faster.
Right. And what you're talking about mainstream media, one of the things that I came to mind immediately that I believe will help your listeners is to, if you imagine living in the 1700s or 1800s, the federal government was very tiny. It was small. It was so small you could barely see it. And government wasn't really in your life. And what I want to tell people now is I see too many people. I see it at our private club. You and I belong to a private business club, the City Club Los Angeles, a very prestigious club of leaders in Los Angeles, very beautiful place. And I was talking to people just last night. I was there. And they were blaming the current president for the reason why things are the way they are in their economy. And I was thinking, the only people who blame other people are people who have a losing mentality. First of all, the president doesn't really rule your life. And if you did that, and if you lived in the 1700s, it would be such a dumb argument because in the 1700s, 1800s, you'd sit there and they'd say, what are you talking about? That guy has no bearing on your life. President Trump, he has no bearing on your life. What are you talking about? Sure, does he change the taxation system? Yeah, but if you run your own business, that's helping you, man. You know, you keep more money now. You just employ more people. You just created more jobs. I find that if you complain about government, if you complain about the president, then you have just found yourself to be a victim of mainstream media and their programming because, man, this person has, if you're focused on him, then you're clearly not doing the entrepreneurial things that you should be focusing on. Because if you have time to focus on the government and to complain about it and to march with a stick in the downtown, then that means you're not doing things to further and grow your business and to become independently wealthy, so that none of that stuff even matters. None of my wealthy friends ever complain about who's in the presidency, because that's irrelevant. That doesn't even matter, because when you're making a bunch of money and employing jobs, sure, the only thing that a lot of my friends complained about was the Obamacare thing, because now they had to get hit with a bunch of extra taxes and fees, because now you're mandated, their insurance stuff. But, that was one of the big complaints. But aside from that, not really, man. So don't focus, for you listeners, stop focusing on how the government is ruining your life. Okay. Because if you do things right by expanding your knowledge base and listening to experts and hanging out with people that are doing greater things than you in your perspective, that you want to be like, people who have what you want and, who have been where you've been and maybe you want to emulate, then you will find that the most successful people out there, they don't give a damn who sits in the president's seat or who's doing what, right? All of these career politicians, man, they go there, they get a salary of $200,000 and they end up making millions of dollars because they force policy their way into their buddies. Okay. So you just need to do that with business, create business, create jobs, force your way with business, do land accounts that they become irrelevant. They should really be a small portion of your life, not the majority of your life. Anyway, it was on my mind because I was talking to people last night about it and they were complaining about the economy. And I'm like, well, you're clearly broke. That's the first thing that came into my head. Oh, then you're clearly broke and you don't have a lot of money because that's all you have to complain about. I like to complain the price of jet fuel, right? I like to complain about the price of diesel, marine diesel for boats. I like to complain about like, oh, come on, things that are real life struggles for like, hey, how much is that bottle of wine? That bottle of wine should not be $8,000, man. You want to complain about things like that, not complain about, goofy things. All right. Of course, someone's going to sit there and say, well, you're complaining about an $8,000 bottle of wine. That's pretty goofy. But then again, hey man, you have your own set of struggles at different levels.
Exactly. And we're not making this, I don't like to discuss politics and religion. This is not about politics. We're talking about blaming others for the results that we get or for what happens in our life. I think it's very important to have the internal locus of control, believing that your actions or the things that happen in your life for you happens because of you, because of your actions and because of your thoughts and beliefs and the values you have. Blaming others, and it includes the government, whoever is in power, it could be this person, that person, third person, fourth person, doesn't matter. If you're blaming, then you have some change to make. Something has to change in your life.
A little bit of change work. Now, if you lived in Venezuela or like North Korea and you blame the government, hey, I guess I understand because you don't really have a choice. Mm-hmm. They're forcing you to believe a certain way. But for your listeners that happen to live in the United States, right, or who happen to have access to the United States and can come here or that live here, then you really don't have a place sitting pointing fingers at the man or the man being anyone, being the government, being, your ex-boss or being your ex who broke up with you and broke your heart and, didn't believe in you. Because at the end of the day, like you said it best right now, Leon. And that is, if you have to point a finger, let me add to that. If you point a finger to blame somebody, then you're already going towards the loser type mentality. Okay, you don't want to even go there, guys, because it's not a productive space. It's not a place where you're going to get inspired. It's not a place where it's going to be filled with love, light, spirituality, and the idea of abundance and help and, love for your employees and for you and your life and your family and providing. It's just going to go to a place of irritation and anger, and that's not going to serve you. So just be conscious of that, guys, as you go through your life.
Exactly. And focus, our human focus, and the things we put our attention towards, I think it's the most valuable currency, more valuable than any dollar, any precious metals, stocks, bonds. That's the most valuable asset we have. And we have the control over what we put that attention towards.
Oh, yeah, because that's going to also keep you healthy. I mean, can you imagine someone filled with anger and what sorts of toxic environment they're creating inside their body, altering their pH levels, creating a less alkaline environment in their body? I mean, just bad stuff grows, man. And, being filled with hate and being filled with regret or sorrow or sadness is not going to be productive. If you have, anger, sadness, fear, and guilt, we talk about this in one of my seminars. And we're rebranding the seminars, by the way. In the past, Leon, you've come to an event that we called How to Start, Fund, and Grow Your Business, right? It was a 2-day event. And so we're rebranding it. We're doing things differently. I'm separating the spiritual component, a lot of the stuff that we're talking about here. I'm separating it from the business stuff, because I would mix it before. I would talk a little bit about spirituality, a little bit about neuro-linguistic programming, and, how to get your mind right, a little bit of motivation, and also how to do step 1, 2, or 3 in your business plan, and how to start acquiring funding for your business, setting up your bank account, logistical steps. And so I would mix both things. So now I'm separating it. So the empowering seminar will be called Keys to Your Future. And that is one that's filled with, inductions, meditations, and empowering beliefs, so that people who want to go to that, they know what to expect. And that's this, we're going to do powerful processes and closed eye inductions and, really do some good change work, right? To up level your life, to lift you up, and to switch out some limiting beliefs or negative emotions that you may have carried through your life. And so Keys to Your Future is going to be very powerful, that people can do at any time in their journey as entrepreneurs when they come into what's called the Entrepreneur Training Bootcamp. And so it's just going to be a little add-on that I'm going to give it to them for free when they purchase one of the seminars. I'm going to say, hey, you come to the seminar, you're also going to get a second seminar for free. And it's called Keys to Your Future. It's part of the package. That way, I'm not forcing it on people, but when they come to it, I've seen people in tears, man. Throughout the years of doing seminars since 2009, training thousands of students, I have seen people do some radical changes, applying the principles that we're talking about here today. So
I can vouch for that. I've been there. I've seen those people, and I know how big of an impact not just the business, the logistics that you talk about, but the spiritual and the other component, the Keys to Your Future. I think it should be there. It makes a bigger impact on people because they develop their core, and then from the core, everything stems. All the steps that they have to follow, the creating business accounts and checking accounts, all those things, it could be done really fast. And they're just tasks that could be really done by anyone.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Especially we give them full details and step-by-step instructions. So, no, you're right, man.
It makes it easy to apply the logistical stuff and be not afraid of success, to deal with those two fears, fear of failure and fear of success, when they have their spiritual and the inner portion figured out.
Yes. One of the reasons why we started, when I say we, it's talking about me and my lady, Marianne. One of the reasons why we started putting in some spiritual components into the seminars, and that was because before I started doing the seminars, I was doing a lot of private consulting, and my private consulting days were $30,000 for 1-day consulting. And it also, they got my cell phone number, and a separate cell phone, not my primary cell phone, but they got my cell phone number and they got access to me, right? And I would help them one-on-one, and we'd spend a whole day together. And then, I'd be in their life till they started getting funding, and, I'd be there in case they had a problem. But I noticed that even though I was charging good money, I was also attracting people that already had some kind of money. If someone could afford to pay $30,000 for 1-day consulting, they were already in a situation where, okay, well, they weren't like dirt poor, right? They weren't like struggling necessarily, even though, people struggle at different levels of income. I can tell you that right now, guaranteed. I know millionaires that are, struggling. So here's the deal. A lot of people would raise great money, right? So my clients would come in, set them up during using the Business Codex 40-step action plan, right? In the advanced class, the business credit, commercial credit, the corporate credit stuff. They would start raising a bunch of money. And then they didn't have the core values of the Keys to Your Future component. I wasn't teaching that to them. I mean, I knew it. I had applied it in my life, and, I was certified to teach others, and I had gone through different classes in order to be able to share these techniques with people. But I just wasn't doing it with them, because these were the kind of people who are like, hey man, I run a business. I got money. Help me get more. Bam, 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 bam. Let's go. Right. And so I noticed that these people, the reason why they came to me was because they were hurting in a way, and I would leave them with more money, and they would end up hurting themselves because there was no interruption of their core values, meaning they're still the same people. They just have more money now. So if you were some person who was a rude individual, you were just a rude individual with an extra $1 million to your business, and now, you can spend it any other way. If you were a person who was completely disorganized, and a person who was like maybe unethical, right? Questionable activities or so forth, then you just now had more money to hurt more people. And so I stopped doing that. I just was, you know what, man, this is not helping people. the way I want to see it help. Sure, did they raise their money? Of course, but long term, how was I affecting their families? How was I affecting everything else? And I know that's not my responsibility. I did my job. I got paid to do my job. They got the result. They're raving fans. They're very happy. But then I would touch base with them in the future, and stuff wasn't going like amazing for them. And so I said, you know what? Forget this, man. When I start doing seminars for groups, I'm going to start teaching with a little bit of an emotional component, with a little bit of a spiritual component, with neuro-linguistic programming, and with strategies that will help them continue to build their, what we call the incredible fortress, their freedom, money, time. These very things that we're talking about here on your podcast. So that's why we started introducing it into the seminars, because I noticed that people needed it, man.
Absolutely. And it reminds me of the fact that most people, if not all people who win a big lottery, eventually in a period of several months to a year, they either lose everything, they end up in a worse situation than they started. Sometimes even they might kill themselves.
Yeah, or they end up getting killed by other jealous or family members. Yeah, no, it's nuts, man.
I want to acknowledge you for the fact that you give the 100%, the whole thing, not just portions,
Yeah, no, I agree. Leon, one of the things that I want to mention is a lot of people that I had met through the years, and the reason why I decided to start doing seminars for the public in the first place was that I noticed that people had a really poor money consciousness. And people didn't understand money, the history of money. They didn't understand how it works, how it's printed. And, I would tell people, yeah, hey, I teach people how to get, credit cards for their business, how to get lines of credit, how to start funding your business with seed capital that you create without having to beg for money. And then people would say to me, well, I don't want to get into debt. Why would I want to learn that? And then I'd sit there and I'd ponder that, and I'd say, wow, this individual doesn't know that the sheer fact that there's $100 bill in their wallet means that there's already an existing obligation, because the Federal Reserve printed it, loaned it to the government, and then your job loaned it to you. It doesn't even belong to you. It belongs to the federal government. That piece of paper never even belongs to you. But that piece of paper is someone else's debt obligation, which is the government. So that money is debt. That's the bottom line. Money is debt. And so a lot of people who believe, oh my gosh, I don't want credit cards, then they clearly don't understand money. So I set off to start challenging and changing people's perception of money so that they would have no problem accepting a loan for their business, or, a mortgage on their first home, if that's what they wanted to do, even though I don't encourage that. But, signing on the dotted line as a guarantor, signing on the dotted line on behalf of your business, and not being scared to do so because you're scared of money and you don't even know what it is. So anyway, I think we've educated a lot of people, and I've only seen great results from people that have gone out into the world and started raising, hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars, and start changing their financial futures forever, which was it's so beautiful to watch people improve themselves like that.
Hey, and I'm one of your students, one of your successful students. I can vouch for your information working, because I myself learned, applied, and got results. The person who's listening to us right now, where can they get in touch with you?
All right. So my site is being redone, but there is a little form there that they can type, they can type in their email if they wish, or they can just check back later, whatever they like. It's thebusinesscodex.com. It's very simple. It's thebusinesscodex.com, CODEX at the end. And that's just the main site. I would say, you can go there, but there's nothing more than a landing page now, or who knows in the future, if you're listening to this, the site actually might be there already. The site is actually there behind that page, but I put that page as a lock as we're developing it. The other thing they can do is make sure they keep tabs on me through Instagram, so that we can continue to, just become friends, man. Just say, hey, how are you? And then I'll make an announcement on my Instagram page. It's Jorge Bueno with the number 1, Jorge Bueno 1. What I seek to do is to help empower more people. And, I love the fact that, you've gone through it, so you can attest to it, and you can look. And I don't want to reveal your financial snapshot and all that, but I do want to say that when you came into class, I remember you were looking around thinking, hey, do I want to take this class? I think I do. And I remember talking to you probably in like 2010, 2011. I have a picture standing with you. I remember that you look really young. We both look much younger, and I think we both grown beards now, and, like doing cigars and stuff. But I remember you being a little hesitant, but it wasn't hesitation towards the information. It was more hesitation towards like, do I need this now? Do I need this later? What's my logistics? What's first? Because I remember you're really good at checklists, and you're really good at implementing. And when I go back and I think of, who's done great things with a class, you always come to mind. And I mention you all the time because I know last time I checked, and I didn't even ask you after that, last time I checked, you were up, several $100,000 in terms of access. And I was like, wow, that's amazing. And I don't want to get specific here. It's no one's business, but it's kind of nice to know that at any time, you can, start a business, buy that big oven to start the pizza shop or whatever, buy lease equipment and you have the know-how, man. So it's a really cool thing here. And I also love listening to, your episodes on the Thriving Life podcast, because, you seem to be attracting really good quality people, man. And the people that seek you out, I guarantee, without you even saying anything, I guarantee that you're not begging people to come onto your show, right? I guarantee that people are coming to you and sending you emails and wanting to be guests on your show, which is where you want to be, man. That's amazing, man. That's a mark of like, they listen to it. They're like, dude, I want to be on that. That maybe I can promote my business. Maybe I can influence someone who's a young spirited person who has that glimmer in their eye and wants to do great things. Maybe I can inspire them with a story or with something that happened to me. And so you have these experts that want to share. And as you continue to record more episodes, I think your listeners are in for a beautiful treat, man.
I absolutely agree with you. First of all, the information like this that you teach about raising capital is very important. That's one of the reasons that I decided to learn it as soon as possible, because I knew it's applicable every day, today, tomorrow, next year, and the years to come. It's information for life. So it was very important for me to lay that foundation.
Definitely.
And then build on top of that. Thank you very much for that. Second, you're absolutely right. My intention with this podcast is to create value for my listener. And the quality of people I attract that want to be guests on my podcast are people who want to provide real world, applicable, practical value to the listener. I want to provide the best advice, best steps towards success for the person who's listening, because I'm serving them. I'm the servant.
Well, one thing I like is that as you listen to your past episodes, you don't hear people saying, oh, and if you act now before midnight and you use the coupon code, Thriving Life, you're going to get 50% off. You buy, come on, buy my stuff. You don't hear that, which is so refreshing, man. When people come on and they share their life and they share their experiences that are going to help other people, and it's not a pitch, that's beautiful. That's awesome. So anyway, hats off to you, man, because that's a cool thing that you're doing, man.
This has been the episode number 10. Check out the episode number 11 for the second part of the interview with Jorge Bueno. In this episode, we discussed how to deal with negative thoughts. In the next episode, we're going to talk about life, business, and relationships, and that's where the fun begins. See you in the next episode. And there we have it. Another amazing guest has visited our club. Make sure to subscribe to the Thriving Life Club podcast on your favorite app. Simply go to thrivinglifeclub.com/ and the name of your favorite platform. iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, Google Play, YouTube. You get the point. You will find the show notes, the episode freebie, and the resources mentioned during the episode by navigating your browser to thrivinglifeclub.com/ and the number of this episode. For example, for the episode 3, you would go to thrivinglifeclub.com/ number 3. For the episode 7, you would go to thrivinglifeclub.com/ number 7. We want to make this podcast the number 1 podcast on iTunes in its category. When you feel inspired, head over to iTunes and give us a quick review to keep the podcast commercial free and get it discovered by more people like you and families like yours. Rate and review the podcast on iTunes and share it with your friends. Let's inspire more people together. And until the next episode, just remember, start where you are, use what you have, do what you can, live a thriving life.